There was a new film being premiered in Glasgow this week. The story, which some people here will remember, was of someone who went back to his old school, Bearsden Academy, when he was in his 30s and had the whole high school experience again in order to resit examinations and get into medical school. It's a story all about identity. It took a long time for people to work out whether this person was exactly who he said he was or not. It's an extraordinary story, and one that I have more than a passing interest in, given that Bearsden Academy was one of the schools that I attended myself. And if I've done my sums right, then I think that I was there at the same time as the guy in the film, the first time that he had his school experience. I was chatting to someone about it this week, and we realized that we were not entirely sure what genre it was. Was it part fiction, or was it trying to be a documentary? Was it first-person biography, or was it someone else telling the story? I've not seen the film yet, but the genre does seem to be interesting in and of itself, never mind the essence of the story. It seems that the director managed to get an audio interview from the protagonist, telling the story in his own words. But he said that he didn't want to appear himself on screen. And so the actor, Alan Cumming, then lip-synced his way through the whole of the interview. And the film was built around that. It sounds fascinating, and a bit weird, if I'm honest. A beguiling story and an interesting way of presenting it. But the more I hear about the film, the less I'm able to pin down what genre it actually is. And so it is with this morning's Gospel. It's the start of Lent. Our journey towards the cross has begun. And we find ourselves listening to a dialogue between two figures. Jesus and the devil are at it in the desert. Now, many here will be hearing this story for the umpteenth time. We often get it at the start of Lent. It's classic Lenten material, helping us to think about sin and temptation. However, I'm conscious that some people listening to this time, this week, will not have that same level of familiarity with it. Some people will be hearing this for the first time. And instead of asking them to try and hear it through the wisdom of those of us who've heard it 100 times, I want to ask those of us who've heard it 100 times to experience the story with those for whom this is new. To enter into hearing this story that's, well, completely disconcerting. It's very strange indeed. And I ask you to ask, what genre is it that we're experiencing? Who is telling this story? Jesus and Satan are depicted in the desert, alone. There's no disciples with them to see and to hear what's going on. There's no note taker. There's no scribe. So who told the story first? Is it really plausible to think that Jesus, on a night out with the disciples, would suddenly say, "You'll never guess what happened to me in the desert the other day. Guess who I met? And guess what he offered me?" I'm not sure that's terribly credible. Somehow this doesn't seem to me to be a documentary or news gathering or even gossip with the lads. Something else is going on, and it's very odd indeed. It seems as though whoever put this story together is retelling it one stage removed from reality, conveying things that are profoundly true, but through a story that is magical, beguiling, and yes, it's downright weird. The film that I was referring to a moment ago is about whether someone is really who they claim to be. And I think that the gospel writers are in the same business, asking us to think about the claims made about Jesus Christ. Is he who he claims to be or not? Is he who other people claim him to be or isn't he? Is he the Son of God? Is he the long-awaited Messiah? Is he more or is he less than what all the stories that are told about him seem to add up to. No matter the elusive genre of this story, it tells us things about the figure of Jesus, things that are profoundly true. Though rather disturbingly, the devil has lines that we might want to use in interrogating Jesus about who he is ourselves. If you are the Son of God, do some magic. Make stones into bread. Who doesn't like a nice loaf after all? But this Son of God isn't interested in fulfilling the expectations of his accuser. One does not live by bread alone. You can hear him shrugging off the challenge. He's not interested in doing tricks. Worship me, says the real trickster, and I'll give you the kingdoms of this world. But this king isn't interested in kingdoms, not in the conventional sense. In our reading from Deuteronomy this morning, we hear the echoes of people believing that because they had won a particular conflict, then God must be on their side. We have plenty of history of that kind of thinking, whether it's in Deuteronomy or more recent stories of conquest that many countries, including the one in which we live, have engaged in from time to time. Jesus shows no particular interest in being co-opted into justifying particular kingdoms. His way is not the way of conquering kingdoms. His is not the way of invasions or empire or force. He won't be co-opted by Putin or by any of us with any claims of supporting one nation exclusively above all others. And having failed to tempt him with that one, the devil takes Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple. He suggests Jesus giving up all responsibility of his own behavior and putting the blame for the consequences of his behavior onto the angels. Not so fast, says Jesus in response. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Maybe you are asking who Jesus is right now. Together in Lent, we share the journey of those who are going to be baptized or confirmed, for that's often what happens at Easter. And Lent really began as a season of preparation for those who were to be baptized at Easter, and the church accompanying them on that journey. Asking who Jesus is a profound part of being a Christian. Today we learn from the writer of Luke's Gospel, who is all but lip-syncing the scene in the desert, a great deal about who Jesus is not. He's not up for doing party tricks. He's not going to be commandeered for empire building. And he seems to think that we do need to be responsible for all that we do. Listen to this story as though it's the first time you've heard it. Look it up in the Bible this week. Read it. Think about it. It's weird. Strange. Odd. Peculiar. The Christian church says that this figure, Jesus Christ, loves you with a love that is endless, priceless, momentous. That's what I've found him to be too. But who do you say that he is?